Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
There was a big meeting in Russia called SPIEF. It happened in a city named St. Petersburg in the summer of 2025. Many people came to this meeting, but not so many from countries in the West. At this meeting, the President of Russia, Mr. Vladimir Putin, gave a very important speech. He talked a lot about Russia's money and economy. President Putin said something surprising. He said that Russia's economy was doing well. He used the word stable. This was different from what some people in Western countries thought. In the United States, for example, the current president is Donald Trump, and it is real. Many people expected Russia's economy to have big problems, maybe even a recession. A recession means the economy gets smaller for some time. But President Putin said Russia would not let a recession happen. He said the economy was growing. He even made a joke, saying that reports about Russia's economic problems were not true, like an old saying from a writer named Mark Twain. He said that many parts of Russia's economy, not just oil and gas, were growing. He talked about having jobs for many people and keeping prices from going up too fast. But he did say that prices were still high and that the government must be careful. The SPIEF meeting showed that Russia is trying to rely on itself. It showed that Russia can still do things even when other countries put pressure on it, like with rules called sanctions. The meeting was also about finding new friends for Russia. Leaders and business people from many countries in Asia and Africa came. This showed that Russia is looking to work more with countries outside of Europe and North America. The meeting felt very planned. The messages that people heard were carefully controlled. For example, President Putin and other Russian leaders met with some foreign business people and journalists, but these meetings were not open for everyone to see or ask questions. The government said this was to help the foreign guests, but it also meant that the government controlled what information came out from the meeting. Overall, the SPIEF meeting in 2025, and especially President Putin's speech, gave a message. The message was that Russia's economy is strong and stable, that Russia is finding new partners around the world, and that the country can manage by itself. But were things really as good as President Putin said? Many people had different ideas. 2. Russia's money report. The country's money situation is not as strong as President Putin said. Official numbers show the economy is growing much slower than before. In the first part of 2025, it grew only a little, about 1.4% compared to the same time last year. Before that, the economy grew more quickly, partly because of money spent on the military. But now, growth is weaker. Experts from the World Bank and the IMF, big international organizations, think the economy will grow slowly for the whole year 2025, maybe only about 1% or 1.5%. This is less than the government's own plan and much less than what President Putin often talks about. Also, everyday things that people buy, like food or clothes, are getting more expensive very quickly. Prices are going up fast. This is called inflation. Inflation is still high, almost 10% right now. This is much higher than the central bank, Russia's main money authority, wants. Their goal is 4%. High inflation means that the money people earn buys less than it did before. This makes life harder for many people in Russia. One number that looks good is about jobs. Many people in Russia have jobs. The number of people without jobs is very low, about 2.3%. This is a record low number. But there are two main reasons for this low number. First, many men have joined the army or other security forces because of the war. Second, some people, especially younger people and skilled workers, have left the country. This means there are fewer people available to work. Companies are finding it hard to find enough workers. This situation also pushes up the cost of paying workers. So, while unemployment is low, it shows stress in the economy. The government is trying to manage its money carefully. The national budget, which shows how much money the government has and spends, does not have a very big deficit right now. A deficit is when the government spends more than it gets. Russia's deficit is about 2% of its economy's size. The government pays for this deficit by using money from a special national fund. This fund holds money saved from selling oil and gas when prices were high. But experts say this special fund might not have much money left by the end of 2025. This means the government might face bigger money problems soon. They might need new ways to get money, perhaps higher taxes, or they may have to spend less on some things. Other signs also show the economy is under pressure. It is difficult for companies to borrow money from banks. Banks are not lending much money to businesses, especially for new projects. The head of Sberbank, a very big bank in Russia, said they have not helped pay for any new projects this year. This means companies are not investing in building new factories or buying new machines. When companies do not invest, the economy finds it hard to grow in new ways. These problems with borrowing and investing show that the economy is facing significant challenges. 4. The government's plan. The government faced a difficult task. It needed to help the country's economy, but there were not many easy ways to do this. Prices for everyday things were going up quickly. To try and stop prices from rising too much, the central bank kept interest rates high. This meant that borrowing money became very expensive. Businesses found it hard to borrow money to grow or start new projects. Banks said that companies were not asking for loans for new investments. A very large part of the government's money was now being used for the military. The amount of money for defense spending was much higher than before. This big spending helped some parts of the economy, like factories that make weapons. These areas saw growth because the government needed their products. But because so much money went to the military, there was less money for other important things. Spending on public services was reduced. Things like health care and money for older people were given less support. The government had to make hard choices about where to spend its money. The most important goal for the government spending was to support the ongoing military effort. This meant that helping people directly or investing in non-military businesses was not the top priority. The government used money from its special savings fund to pay for things. But experts thought this savings fund might not last for a long time if spending continued like this. The focus on the military meant that many parts of the economy that are not related to the war did not get the help they needed. They found it hard to get money and support. The government seemed to be choosing to keep the military strong, even if it meant other parts of the economy suffered. They said they would use good financial plans to avoid problems, but the main goal was clear. The military effort came first. 4. World rules and trade changes. Countries in the West put strong economic rules on Russia. These rules are called sanctions. They want to stop Russia from getting money and important technology from outside. Because of these sanctions, not much new foreign money comes into Russia anymore. This is a big change for the economy. Many large companies from countries in Europe and North America decided it was too difficult or wrong to continue working in Russia. So they left the country completely. When these foreign companies left, the Russian government sometimes took control of their businesses and sold them to Russian people or companies. This happened with many well-known brands, like big restaurant chains and food producers that everyone knew. This means that many businesses that were once partly owned by people outside Russia are now fully Russian. Russia's economy gets a lot of money from selling its natural resources, mainly oil and gas. Before the sanctions, many European countries bought most of this energy. But now this has changed. Russia sells much more of its oil and gas to countries in Asia, especially China and India. To make these deals, Russia sometimes has to sell its energy at a lower price than before. Trade numbers show that business between Russia and countries like China and India has grown a lot very quickly. Sanctions also made it hard for Russia to buy many finished products and parts from other countries. Items like cars, modern machines for factories, airplanes, and even some foods are now difficult to get. To fix this, Russia is trying hard to make more of these things itself. This idea is called import substitution. Russian companies are encouraged to start making products that were usually bought from abroad, hoping to become self-sufficient. However, this big change in world trade brings many problems. It is difficult for Russian factories to get the best parts and new technology because of the sanctions. Also, finding new markets for all Russian goods is not easy. Sending goods around the world has become more complicated and expensive. The government says this is making Russia strong and independent. But experts outside Russia say that losing connections with the global economy makes Russia's businesses less modern and the country more alone. Trade rules have truly changed for Russia, creating both new paths and many difficulties. 5. War and the economy. The country is spending a very large part of its total income on the war. This means a huge amount of the government's money goes to the military and defense. Reports say this is about 8% of the country's total economy, called GDP, which is a record level since the Soviet Union ended. Almost half of the government's money is now used for the military effort and security needs. Because so much money is directed towards the war, there is less money available for other important areas of the country. The government is spending less on essential things like schools, making education budgets tighter. They are also spending less on hospitals and building better roads, affecting public services and infrastructure. Money for social programs that help ordinary people, like pensions for older people or support for healthcare services, is also being reduced or is not increasing as prices rise, meaning less real help. There is also less investment in civilian areas, such as building new houses or improving public transport like trains. The main focus of government spending is heavily on supporting the military machine and its needs. The economy did see some growth in the last few years, which President Putin mentioned. However, this growth happened mainly because factories were busy making a lot of weapons, tanks, and other military equipment for the war effort. This activity created jobs and kept certain industries busy, boosting production numbers. But experts warn that this kind of growth might not be permanent or healthy for the overall economy. It is sometimes called a war boom because it depends so much on the needs of the conflict. They say this growth could slow down or stop when the demand for military goods reaches its limit or changes. The government has money saved in special reserves or funds for difficult times, like a rainy day fund. But the government is using these savings very quickly to help pay for the war and cover other large costs. Financial reports show that these funds are getting low quite fast. Some people who study the economy think these saved funds might be used up soon, perhaps by the end of next year, if spending continues at this high level. If the government savings are used up, it will cause bigger money problems in the future for the country. The government will need to find new ways to get more money or spend less overall. One possible way could be to increase taxes that people and businesses have to pay, taking more money from them. Another way could be to make even deeper cuts to spending on public services that benefit ordinary citizens, reducing help and support. This difficult financial situation shows the economy is facing significant strain and pressure because of the high costs of the ongoing war, which affects everyone. 6. Experts in Russia speak. In Russia, economic experts had different ideas about the country's money situation. They looked at the same facts, but saw different things. This meant there was not one clear view inside the country. Some experts gave a clear warning. They thought a recession was very close. A recession means the economy is not growing or is getting smaller for a time. These experts looked at how businesses felt and other signs. They saw that things were difficult for many companies. The country's economy minister, Maxim Reshetnikov, spoke openly about this worry. He said that Russia was on the brink of a recession. This was a strong statement, meaning he felt a downturn could happen very soon, based on what he saw. Leaders of important banks also shared their concerns about businesses. The head of a very big bank, Sberbank CEO German Greff, said that businesses were not asking for money from the bank. They were not borrowing or making new investments. This showed that companies were not planning for growth. Another important banker, Andrei Kostin from VTB Bank, agreed. He told a newspaper that no companies from other countries were likely to return under the current sanctions. This showed that international business interest was very low. These bankers' views supported the idea that the economy was slowing down. However, other experts saw the situation differently. These experts often supported the government's view and agreed with President Putin that the economy was stable and strong. They said that Russia had low government debt compared to many countries. They also said the government's budget was managed well. These experts pointed to Russia trading more with countries in Asia and Africa as a success. They said Russian businesses were finding ways to work even with sanctions from the West. They felt Russia could make more of its own products to replace things from other countries, which would help the economy grow. Sergei Glaziev, an economic advisor who supported the government, was one who shared this positive view, saying Russia could have good growth by replacing imports and finding new export markets. So, there was not a single idea inside Russia about the economy's health. Some experts were worried about a coming recession and slow business activity. They pointed to specific signs of weakness. Others were much more positive, saying the economy was strong and finding new ways to adapt and grow. This showed there were strong disagreements and different opinions about the true state and future of the Russian economy, even among people working closely with it in the country. 7. The world watches Russia. Many economic experts who are not in Russia listened carefully to President Putin's speech. He said the economy of Russia was strong and that a recession would not happen. But most of these experts were not convinced by his words. They looked at the information and data available and felt the reality was different from what President Putin described. Big international organizations that study economies, like the International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF, and the World Bank, gave lower predictions for how much Russia's economy would grow. They did not see the strong picture that President Putin presented during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, or SPIEF. News organizations in many different countries also reported on Russia's economy. Their reports often said that the situation looked difficult and maybe even troubled. They used words like gloomy outlook to describe the future for Russia's money situation. They pointed to signs of problems instead of signs of strength, as President Putin had done. This was a common view in Western countries. However, countries that have friendly relations with Russia had a different response. Leaders and state media in these nations often spoke about Russia's economic situation in a positive way. They said that Russia was showing strength and could handle the pressure and difficulties put upon it by other countries. They praised Russia's economic resilience. This highlighted that the view of Russia's economy was very different depending on which country you were in and how friendly it was with Russia. Some parts of the world saw a country facing significant economic challenges, while others saw resilience and self-reliance. The government of Ukraine had one of the strongest reactions against President Putin's statements. Officials in Ukraine said that President Putin's claims were not true. They strongly disagreed with his description of a strong economy. Ukraine's leaders pointed out that the war started by Russia was having a very negative effect on Russia's own economy. They worked to show the world the problems and difficulties that the war created for Russia's money and businesses. Ukraine's view was clear. The conflict was hurting Russia's economy greatly, not proving its strength or success. They highlighted the negative economic impact of the war on Russia's ability to grow and prosper. So, many eyes from around the world were watching Russia and discussing its economy. Economic experts and different countries had very different ideas about how strong Russia really was. President Putin spoke with confidence at events like SPIEF, but many outside Russia saw other signs in the data. Some nations friendly to Russia agreed with his view, but others, especially Ukraine, strongly disagreed, pointing to the real economic costs of the ongoing war. The international discussion showed that understanding Russia's economy was complex and closely linked to global politics and events. 8. The future for Russia. President Putin says Russia will not have a recession. He hopes the economy will be strong. But many people see that Russia's economy faces big problems now and in the future. The economy is growing much slower than before. Prices for food and other things are high. It is hard for businesses to borrow money to grow. A large amount of money goes to the military for the war. This means less money for other important things like schools, doctors, and pensions for older people. Experts think the government might run out of its savings soon. Because of this, the government might need to spend less money on public services, or people might need to pay more taxes. Sanctions from other countries also make it hard to trade and get new technology. Many foreign companies left, and it is hard for Russian companies to get parts they need. The future for Russia's economy is not clear. Can it get stronger without the war ending? Many think this is very difficult. The problems with the economy will affect the daily lives of ordinary Russian people. Life could become harder for them. What do you think the future holds for the Russian economy?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.